What does your dream house look like? Is it a big block with a big backyard and lots of privacy? Or maybe something more semi-city lifestyle like a townhouse where it's lower maintenance but you have to share a driveway? Or an apartment where you are right in the heart of the city and you get access to a gym and a pool, but you don't have to maintain them, but you kind of have to share them with people. Different wins, different cons. Let's discuss. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Reese. In today's video, I'm going to be having a discussion about houses, townhouses, and apartments. When it comes to purchasing your first home or any home, one of the biggest decisions is deciding what type of home you're looking for. Your three categories generally fall into the detached home on a big block, the townhouse, which may be a shared block of smaller houses, but still, again, relatively nice and private homes, or an apartment which is in a skyrise building somewhere in the city. There's no simple answer because each of these have their own benefits and drawbacks. And as a home buyer, it ultimately depends on your individual needs. These include things like whether you'll need more space in the future, if you're planning to grow or start a family, or if it's going to be a principal place of residence, so an owner-occupied home or an investment property. Here are ultimately a few questions that you should be asking to determine what type of property is going to be the right one for you. I'm just going to run through them. So how big is your family? What can you afford? Do you mind paying body corporate fees? Is a garage essential? Do you want a backyard? Do you have pets? Do you mind sharing facilities? Is it your intention to upsize in the future or downsize in the future? What are you or aren't you prepared to compromise on? Are you planning to do renovations? Do you mind living close to your neighbours, even if it is wall to wall? Do you want to own land? And are you planning to be an owner-occupier forever? Or do you plan on moving or renting in the future? Home ownership is constantly changing. I'm going to start with detached homes as they are still probably the most popular type of property that people like to own. The Australian Bureau of Statistics, about 70% of people who are owner-occupiers live in a detached home in Australia. Detached homes generally offer the most flexibility, space, and privacy in comparison to properties like townhouses and apartments. The drawback is that they generally come with higher maintenance costs and generally more running costs. As you have more space to maintain, you may have access to more bathrooms, more taps within the house, your utilities should be a little bit more expensive, and the actual cost, again, like I said, will probably be higher to maintain the larger land size. So if you can't decide between a detached home and an apartment, you can meet somewhere in the middle, and that is a townhouse. It offers a bit of both worlds. So townhouses are multi-level buildings, generally a two-storied building, which are located relatively close to the city, I'm going to say within the span of maybe 30 kilometers. They're designed to mimic a detached home, but they're generally on a shared plot of land, meaning they might be a strata title where it's the same house with a wall straight down the middle which attaches the two, but they are essentially a standalone home still. You own the home, but share the land that it sits on. Townhouses usually offer privacy and space similar to a detached home, where your family will still be able to move around, get outside, and enjoy the spaces provided by them. This is the downside to townhouses though, and it's that you still face similar restrictions to that of an apartment, as you still may have to pay for the body corporate fees associated with apartments. So depending on the type of townhouse you purchase, you may have to pay fees to maintain, let's just say, the garden area or the driveway. Townhouses only account for about 12% of all housing within Australia, but this type of house is on the rise as they are becoming more popular, as they are generally more affordable than your stereotypical detached home. One thing to keep in mind with townhouses is their layout generally is very similar with the exterior and interior to that of their counterparts on the same block of land, because generally, a developer will build them all in the simplest way possible, costing them less so they can maximize their profits. And finally on the list, apartments. Now, apartments are growing in popularity, but it's always a point of contention and everyone has an opinion surrounding them. Apartments are homes to growing families, young couples, and people looking to downsize. Back in 2010, about 20% of homes being built were apartments. Whereas as of 2018, again, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, almost 50% of all homes built in that year were apartments. Apartments can generally give you access to a range of amenities which you may not have had access to in the first place, such as things like a pool, an indoor gym, a nice garden space area. Generally, all of these are communal though, so you're sharing the space with someone else. With apartments, unfortunately, you're going to be spending money to maintain them because everyone in an apartment complex is part of a body corporate, meaning they all pay a fee, whether it be monthly or every year, to maintain these services. The massive pro to apartments is they're generally in pretty convenient locations and they are usually more affordable than both townhouses and detached homes. Apartments generally are the more popular option for investors because they're easy to rent out in areas where people are traveling to and from, and also with young people who are trying to get into the market but may not be able to afford the stereotypical detached home. The trade-off is space and freedom to do what you want with this space. Generally, you'll need approval to make changes to the actual interior of an apartment. And overall, the actual space itself is generally smaller, meaning you actually have to leave your home in order to get some fresh air or get out and about, which isn't always the most desirable thing for someone who wants to just spend some time in their own home, in the comfort of their own home, but not feel isolated. As a general rule, detached homes will provide a better capital growth than that of townhouses and apartments, whereas apartments generally bring in a higher rent because they are usually in more desirable locations and easier to maintain, ultimately increasing your profit margin. But ultimately, these pros and cons are a result of the current state of the economy, the current state of the housing market, and their location. Whether you're buying a property as your principal place of residence, so your owner-occupied home, or an investment, there are lots of things you need to weigh up when deciding between a detached home, an apartment, or a townhouse. Narrowing down your property options based on the questions at the very start of the video will definitely give you some guidance into what is the correct method for you. Narrowing down your property options is much easier when you know exactly what your property needs are. So I encourage you to review the questions that I asked you at the very beginning of the video, and hopefully they provide some insight into the type of direction that you should be taking when looking for a property. These are just 3 types of dwellings that I've discussed in this video because they are the most common, but there are lots of different types that I haven't covered in this video. Keep that in mind as well. I encourage you to do your research. I encourage you to actually really think about it because buying a property is a life-changing event and you're going to essentially be locking yourself in for a really long period of time. Overall, I hope the video today was insightful. I hope it made you think a little bit about the scenarios of where you're going to be placed when looking for a property. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And as always, I will see you in the next one.